Hello, welcome to a short presentation on the NX Early Access program. This presentation is designed for multiple audiences. You might be an experienced tester and you've traveled to Siemens facilities in the past for beta tests, or perhaps you've experienced one of our virtual testing sessions in the past and you want to understand how the current EAP program has grown out of those past events and what the benefit is to you and your company to participate in the EAP. Or perhaps you're a new user, you've not been to an event before, and you just want to understand what to expect when you do get involved. Some of you might be customers looking to do a new deployment of NX, and it's been recommended to you that participating in the EAP is one of the best ways to kick off a new upgrade or deployment program, and you wanted to learn more about how that will benefit you. Or perhaps you're not a user or admin of NX at all, but you're a manager of a group or an individual that is. And that person has asked you for permission to spend some of their time, maybe 10, 12, 30, 40 hours in the next couple of weeks to participate in the program, or perhaps to even travel to a Siemens facility to participate, and you want to understand what the benefits are and what you're going to get for allowing that participation. We obviously realize that everybody's time is valuable, and you want to make sure that you're making the best use of that time and resource. So I hope that no matter what viewpoint you're coming from, you're going to find something helpful and useful in this short presentation. This presentation is organized around the three most common questions we get when we talk about the NX Early Access program. First, what is NX EAP? Second, why join the NX EAP? And third is how to join the NX EAP. First, what is the NX Early Access program? The NX Early Access program is taking place twice per year. It happens approximately 3.5 months ahead of each new NX release, typically in March and September, and includes a number of activities for participants. It's composed at a high level of 6 individual elements, and you're free to pick and choose which you join, although we would encourage you to join as many as you can to get the most benefit out of the program. We kick off each EAP with a week that we call the Virtual Training and Presentation Week. This is 5 days with multiple sessions on each day. It provides participants with presentations and demonstrations of what's new and in the coming release. These presentations are done by the product managers, the development leads, the QA leads, the product definition managers, and the NX marketing team, who have all been participating in the design and the development of each new area of functionality. We generally have about 3 hours of presentations each day with several functional areas covered each day, and recordings are made available of these sessions on the EAP documentation site for later review, so that those of you that cannot join live can review it later, or you can save these movies and share them with your colleagues that weren't able to join. We also provide the presentation slides and the demo movies along with demo data where available, so that you can reproduce what you've seen during these sessions when you get hands-on with the software itself later in the program. The week following the virtual presentation week, we make the EAP software available for testing. We do this on your site, so traditionally that's been a download by license and EAP software installation kit that you can put on your machine. We are also starting to use the new Siemens Software Center that allows you to do a local installation with one button push by logging in with your web key credentials. That pulls down the EAP software and installs it. It also installs an encrypted license file on your machine. The benefits to the SSC is that it will not interfere with your production license or your production installation. You'll get a new menu pick that allows you to start from the Windows Start menu, and it allows an automatic update when we make changes to the EAP software or to the license. This will make it very easy for somebody who's not an administrative or IT type of user to quickly get up and running with the EAP software on their own machine. Week number 3 kicks off the third event of the EAP, which is the VIP week. This is typically 2 weeks long, and for those of you that participated in the beta tests of old, you'll be familiar with this week. This is what started with our program over 20 years ago, where we would bring in a select list of customers. We'd invite you to one of our facilities, and those weeks traditionally were focused on submitting problem reports and working out some of those early issues prior to the release. In recent years, the quality of EAP software has gotten such that many of the testers have commented that they would even be willing to release what they saw during the testing cycle. And so while we still focus on finding those early issues, that's no longer the sole focus. And even when we find those issues, what we really would like you to do for that session is focus on your workflows, your data, the things that your customers do that might be unique in some ways compared to what we do with our standard testing. And so that allows us to make sure that we're covering everything. We still do invite small groups to participate at some of our Siemens sites. We've also expanded this greatly, so there's a huge number of people now that participate in this virtually without needing to travel to Cyprus or Milford or one of our other remote global sites. And that's really expanded the number of people that can experience this. One of the big things that we do during the VIP week is we give you not just hands-on with the software, but as I said, we allow you to run with your own data. You're going to bring your own workflows. This allows you to check any outstanding PRs you may have submitted in the past. This allows you to check any ERs that your company submitted in the past. And we will make a list of both of those available to you for easy reference during the testing cycle. Some of the examples of the things that we do during this session are conducting daily opening and closing calls. This time that you can ask your questions about the new functionality, what you saw, what you have questions about, what maybe you didn't like, what maybe you did like. And these meetings will have participation from our product managers, our development leads, our marketing team, our QA leads, the product definition people who are the ones that actually write the specs. So sometimes there's a question about, my PR was closed as, quote, works as designed. What was the design? Why was the design there? What was it you were after? Sometimes that can get into where is this function going in the future. We have ad hoc meetings on topics of interest. Sometimes those are things that come up during the daily calls where people have questions they want to dive a little bit deeper with a product manager or product definition or a development lead and dig into some details. Or that might be something that we know ahead of time is a new area in the software that are likely to have questions, and we'll go ahead and create those. Those will happen sometime during the day, VIP week. We will record those because we know that there are people in other time zones that may not be able to access that in real time, and those will get posted to the documentation site for later reference. The other thing that we will try to do on occasion is give you hands-on with an early prototype of some future function and get your feedback on that. That would be something not being released with this EAP cycle, but might be something coming in a future cycle 6 months or 12 months down the road. And what we use is what we call the daily open call. When we are in our facility during the VIP week, it's easy enough for you just raise your hand and we'll come over to your terminal, find out what your question is, and then we can pull in the appropriate person. Sometimes that would be by phone. Sometimes we can go grab a developer from his or her cube if they're nearby in that facility. Virtually, we can do essentially the same thing. We run a team session that stays open all day. You can drop in and drop a comment into that team session. You can turn on the mic and holler out to that team session, and one of us will be monitoring that. We'll find out what your question is. We'll pull the appropriate person into that team's discussion, and then we can just have a sidebar with you and whatever your topic is, whatever it is that, whatever your question is that you need answered. At the end of the VIP event, we conduct a wrap-up meeting. We will give you a survey towards the end. We'll collect all of your input. We'll find out what you thought was good, what was not, what you think's ready to ship, what you might think needs work, what looks great, what might need some tweaks, what plans you might have to deploy the new release or perhaps future releases, and what you might like to see in the future. And we give each of the participants approximately 5 minutes to present this during the wrap-up meeting. The wrap-up meeting is widely attended by Siemens executives, managers, development leads, product managers, people in product definition, marketing, and other subject matter experts. So you'll be talking straight to the source, if you will, with your comments. As I said, many of the attendees do like to share, so we do try to limit the participation to 5 minutes so we can keep the meeting to a reasonable length. But we do open this to not just attendees that are on site, but to the virtual attendees that we're doing the off-site testing as well. This is, as I said, usually the week after the VIP ends, and it's usually a couple of days before the final software freeze. And so we will review the open PRs and kind of where things might stand relative to the release and give you a feeling for where we're headed. After the wrap-up meeting, we continue to accept PRs and ERs on the product. But the real focus, since we've already hit freeze at this point, is no longer on the PRs, but is really focused on customers that are actively working towards a deployment of that software, and they're continuing to test their own workflows. And one of the things they're going to want to test is their customizations. Many of our large customers we know have NX Open and other customizations. And so one of the final releases that we will do as part of EAP is known as the Predeployment Release. And that will freeze the API. That's approximately 6 to 8 weeks before the final release, or what we internally call RTM. Historically, some customers would always wait till the final release and do their compiles and their testing because they were concerned about things changing. We now guarantee that the API will not change past that freeze date. So you can be confident that you can compile your NX Open applications prior to RTM and start that testing. And once release comes, you will not need to recompile. You can continue to use those. And if the compiler is not changing, and we typically don't change compilers any more often than 12 to 18 months anymore, you can even continue to use builds that you might have done with previous releases. This helps not just our customers that are doing early deployment testing, but also our third-party partners that build products that are compatible with NX. This allows them to start ahead of RTM and therefore have their products ready when NX itself ships. They can be ready to ship concurrently. The final milestone, of course, and the goal of this whole process is the software release, or what we internally call the release to manufacturing. A couple of other things in addition to the software coming out is that this is when we start the registration for the following round of EAP. So if this is not one that you want to focus on, maybe not one you're going to deploy, and you want to be looking ahead to the next one, this is when you can start getting that registration in. We also realize that for customers that are deploying on this release, you may not have been able to complete everything that you need done exactly by this date. So it'll allow you some flexibility before you actually switch over to RTM, release and continue your testing. We will the license will continue to work for a number of weeks after RTM to give you a little bit of overlap. So now you know what the early access program is, but why should you participate in EAP? There are a number of benefits for customers, partners, and Siemens staff as well to participate. Some of those are tangible, some of those are intangible. We're going to divide those into 3 different areas. The first area is on the topic of learning. There are a lot of technical documents and available from Siemens. Siemens Learning Services provide great training, as do many of our third-party training partners. But the type of learning you get during EAP is something that really can't be replicated in any other way. I discussed in the earlier slides about the virtual training week and the recordings that come from that, the presentations, the demo scripts, the fact that you can talk with a product manager, product definition person exactly on why did we create something? What is it intended to be used for? What are our suggested setups and usage of it? We talked about the ad hoc sessions where you can throw the questions out that maybe weren't answered in those sessions. Those are all things that really don't have a good way to be recreated after the event. It kind of gives you the behind-the-scenes look at not just the technology itself, but why the technology was developed, as well as where that technology is headed, and that's something that you won't get from any other source. Many times, because of our continuous release cycle, you might see something that comes out in the 6-month release that's really part of a larger 1 or 2 year project, and so you're going to see 2 or 3 or 4 more releases in this area. It's the kind of thing we can discuss during EAP, but we can't really discuss that in public once the software has been released. So there's a lot of benefits that come from the non-Burke learning, if you will, because they're coming directly from the source during the EAP event. I will often encourage my customers, even if you're not planning to release this cycle, if you're going to look at this software in 3 months or 6 months, or even if it's a year from now, you're going to come back to it, join the EAP now to get access to the learning piece, because once the release happens, there will be no more access to that, and you will miss that opportunity. So I highly recommend you get involved for this purpose as much as anything else. On a learning topic, that it's sort of a peek behind the curtain, and that gets into the access and sharing topic. This is where you can sit down with a product developer, a product definition person, a development lead, and you can talk about not just the details of the new function, but how those details are actually going to work for you, for your company, for your users, maybe in your industry. Maybe there's something that you think we didn't consider when we put the product specifications together. some uniqueness that maybe you do that we're not seeing from other customers, or maybe we haven't had that input from somewhere else. This is your chance to talk to us and share that information. We absolutely want to hear those stories. But while we're out at users conferences and traveling a lot to customer sites or discussing in the forums, it's not always possible to get all of that input, or sometimes we may miss something. And this is just another chance for you to get that in. The other thing is it's a two-way input, and because we're under the pre-release agreement during the EAP process, it allows us to have a little bit more open discussions on future prototypes and product directions than what we would be able to have with you in any other forum. So it really allows for a frank discussion of your needs and our direction and how we can bring those two together. It's a way that you can review your individual PRs and ERs. I mentioned earlier that we will make those available to you when you come in for convenience sake, or certainly you can pull those off a support center yourself. But it's a way for you to come in and say, well, I've got this ER, this PR that we submitted 6 months or 9 months ago, and we'd like to discuss the status of it. We're not sure where it stands. We may be able to say, we're looking at that enhancement request, and frankly, that's not aligned with where we're going because we're not seeing that in the technology direction. We're not hearing that from other customers. Or we might be able to say, yeah, that's a great idea. That's something we're working on. It's not in this release, but it's something you're going to see in 6 months or 9 months or 12 months down the road. The other way that you can access and have that sharing is on the private early access program forum that we set up on the community site. That will be a closed forum only available to people registered through the EAP. So again, because all the people in there will be under the signed PRA agreements, we're able to have a little bit more frank discussion than we would in the normal public forums. The last area of benefit is the networking aspect. Now, when people come to the VIP weeks in person in one of our facilities, you have not just the formal technical presentations, but a chance to talk to other testers over meals at the hotel, during the breaks, to catch a developer in the hallway, just those informal discussions where you may be able to ask a question or glean some experience. In particular, when talking to some of your peer users, you might learn how do others in your industry use the software. What's their deployment experience? What sort of integrations do they use? Maybe what other third-party specialty products might be helpful to you, particularly on an industry level. And while that's helpful in person, of course, not unlike if you attended a users conference, we do try to extend this as well to those of you that can only join us virtually. So we have discussions like that in the forums, in the daily calls, where you can do peer-to-peer discussions with some of your fellow users. So that brings us to the final question, how to join the NX Early Access program. As mentioned, the registration typically opens right around the end of the previous EAP and release cycle, and the registration is open to customers, partners, third-party developers, as well as NX staff. We will request that you sign a pre-release agreement because we're going to be talking about unreleased software and technology. We need to make sure we're covered for all of that. That agreement is good for 1 calendar year, so that would, if you're doing two tests in a year, that'll cover 2 tests. As I said, typically that registration is going to open in June and December calendar-wise during the year. There is a link shown there in the slide. That's where you can go to start the registration process. It'll collect your email, so you'll also be notified of when future EAP events open. From there, you're going to go to a site where you're actually going to register. You're going to download and sign the PRA. It will ask you there, are you interested in being invited to one of the specific VIP portions of the EAP where perhaps you'd be interested in traveling to one of our facilities, for example, or you might indicate that you want to do the VIP weeks virtually, and so you can do that on the registration site as well. Once the registration is in, we will confirm your web key, your sold to, which is your license file, and just validate that you're a current customer or partner or employee. And that then gives you access to everything that was discussed in these slides, the training, the software, the license, the VIP week, the wrap-up meeting, the closed forum, etc. If there's any questions that you have that haven't been answered, ask the person that made this presentation available to you today, or you can email the NX EAP team at the address shown there, nxeapteam@sisw@siemens.com. summarize everything, here's a graphic representation of all the individual events and processes inside of the early access program, showing their relative timings. You can see that the program kicks off twice a year around December and June. With registration, we're setting up the private forum, and then the actual virtual training will start approximately halfway through that cycle in March and September of each year. We'll have the virtual training. The following that will be the software and license availability of the EAP1 release. We'll have the VIP weeks, either on site or virtually, and the EAP PR submission site opens around that same time. We'll continue to accept PRs all the way through the release cycle. The VIP wrap-up session will follow. Then you can see the API freeze with the EAP2 release coming on there. And then customers that want to stay involved with pre-deployment readiness can continue to do so until and actually beyond the actual NX release. And then, of course, the cycle will start over for the next iteration. So as I said, if you got any questions, feel free to contact the person who gave this to you or us through the email. And with that, I appreciate your time today and look forward to seeing you participate in one of our future NX Early Access Program events.